public, and federal sector to promote sound and stable labor management relationships. And as in the past, I've been asked today to be here to help facilitate and mediate your ongoing negotiations. So we've got a live stream going in this joint session. I imagine that we do a lot of work together here today in this joint session, but I also imagine that there are going to be times where we take advantage of the virtual breakout rooms so that your respective groups have an opportunity to chat amongst themselves, and so that I can chat with you and see how I might be able to help you move forward in a productive manner. Those sessions will not be live streamed in accordance with my strict confidentiality requirements. So I do want to go over two things. Today, I'm acting as a third-party neutral. I have no decision-making authority here, obviously. If there's any agreement, it's going to be of your own volition and on your own terms. But at no time will you hear me advocate for any party position or proposal. My neutrality will be maintained at all times and is supreme. In addition, I am strictly confidential. So in this joint session, I'll really only engage the process. If I get involved in the substance of your bargaining, that'll be done in the separate joint breakout sessions. Those are strictly confidential. So again, they won't be live streamed, and anything that you would share with me in those will not be shared with anyone of the other group unless I get your express permission to do so. I would love, if you will, to go through, and I'm going to do sort of a roll call just so we can do some introductions on the chance that there are some of you who have not met each other, but mostly for myself and the viewing audience so that we know who is participating in bargaining this year. So I'll go through a quick roll call. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your role here within bargaining, that would be greatly appreciated. After we do those brief introductions, I'm going to ask both groups if there's any introductory remarks that you'd like to make to get us started. After that, we're going to go into what information has been exchanged. It's my understanding that there's been some information requested, some information provided, and we may have some questions about that information. Once we get through that, I'm going to open it up to proposals and see if there's a party that has a proposal that they would like to put on the table to get us started here today. So if we can jump into those introductions. First, for the district, I'm going to go down your list that I've been provided. Susanna, how are you?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here, Kayla. I'm doing well.
All right. Mark, are you with us?
Yes, good morning, Kayla. Good morning, everyone. Mark Ferrandino, Deputy Superintendent of Operations.
Awesome. Thank you. June.
Hi, good morning. I'm June Taylor, Chief Human Resources Officer for the district.
All right. Thank you, June. Jim.
Good morning, everybody. Jim Carpenter, Chief Financial Officer for the district.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Caesar.
Good morning. Cesar Cedillo, Operational Superintendent for Southwest and Southeast Schools.
Okay, thank you. Antonio.
Good morning, everybody. Antonio Esquivel, Principal, Abraham Lincoln High School.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. And Miguel.
Hi, everyone. Miguel Perretta, Director of Labor Relations for the district.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's go to DCTA. Lawrence, are you with us?
Yeah, Lawrence Garcia, Executive Director for the Denver Uniserve Unit, which DCTA is a part of.
Awesome, thank you. Tiffany.
Tiffany Choi, high school French teacher and president of the DCTA.
Awesome, Tiffany, thank you. Rob.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Rob Gould. I am the vice president of DCTA, but in my evenings, but during the day, I am, of course, a teacher on special assignment. I'm a special education teacher by trade, but I currently work with the peer observation program with our talent management. So I evaluate and coach teachers.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Lynn, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Kayla. I'm Lynn Valencia Hernandez. I am on the bargaining team for DCTA, and I'm also an English and Ethnic Studies teacher at Thomas Jefferson High School.
Awesome. Thank you, Lynn. Amanda.
Hello. Amanda Listman. I am a speech language pathologist with DPS, and I'm a member of the DCTA.
Awesome. Thank you. Michelle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Horwitz. I'm a speech language pathologist in the Northwest on the Spanish assessment team, and I am part of the DCTA bargaining unit.
Awesome. Thank you. Jeff, how are you, Jeff?
I'm well, thank you. How are you? My name is Jeff Buck. I teach engineering, computer science, and math at Denver South High School.
Awesome. Thank you. Henry.
Hi, good morning. Math teacher at Emily Griffith High School.
All right. Dana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dana Berge. I'm an ECE teacher at Pascual Ledoux Academy and DCTA bargaining team.
Okay. Brian?
I'm Brian Weaver. I teach at Florida Pitt Waller, 6th grade math in the far Northeast, and I'm a DCTA bargaining team member.
Great, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Jane.
Hey everyone, I'm Jane Linneman. I am a school psychologist and currently serving as a student safety coordinator for the district.
Okay, thank you, Jane. That's my full list. Have I missed anyone? Nope, I don't think so. Okay, what I'd like to do before we really jump into the substance of negotiations is ask, does either party have any introductory or opening remarks that they would like to share with me and with the other party before we get started today? Susanna, please.
So thank you, Kayla. And largely I wanted to be able to do this because I knew I was going to have to step out. I just wanted to name how important I think it is for us to be able to engage in conversations in an environment of respect and collaboration. There is nobody, I can assure you, who is less excited than I am about being in this position. And if it were not for the global pandemic and the incredibly challenging budget situation that we find ourselves in, is the only reason that I would put us in a position where we would have to have a conversation like this. And so just wanted to state my own commitment to continuing to be able to work on collaborative relationships and trust, to be as forthcoming with information as we can, to seek solutions that are based on solving problems as opposed to coming to the table with predetermined solutions, and our commitment to finding solutions that work as much as possible for the entire organization, and put our teachers at the heart of our decision making. And so just wanted to start from that place and let you know that that's always going to be my commitment.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else have any opening remarks that they would like to share or make before we get started? Rob?
Yeah, I'll kind of start there. DPS and DCTA, we have been growing in our relationship over the last year. In 2019, we came together and through the community, Denver community, and everybody supported us through the DPS and DCTA strike. And we were able to come up with a really historic agreement that made it so that our teachers and our SSPs were actually feeling valued, right? This is off of the last 10 years of really dealing with these experiments with our teachers and students in the classroom. And I think, I thank the administration for definitely moving forward in a different light this year. We've grown in our relationship, and we look forward to really working together to try to solve these issues. And we wanted to make sure and point out our school board as well. We've been doing a lot of work up front to understand a lot of these issues and the different parts and pieces of the budget. And just want to thank our school board as well for all the time they've put in for really trying to make that relationship different from what it was in the past. And so we look forward to these conversations. This is not this is not a place we wanted to be, right? My goal was for our team was to make sure that we had some time off from the bargaining, but we do understand that with how things have changed over the last year, everything's upside down these days, it feels like, and we understand why we're here. We do still we have concerns about where we'll figure this out within the process of why, you know, where it's going to wash out in the end. We did want to also acknowledge our teachers. Our teachers have done an extremely great job over the last, you know, few months with all of the challenges that have come across with COVID and with the movement to remote learning and all of the parts and everything that we've all just been challenged with. And so just want to recognize our teachers. And Tiffany, I you know, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to kind of mention with that, but we wanted to make sure and give a shout out. Our teachers have been working so hard, and and our SSPs as well. And we just thank them so much for everything they've done.
Thank you, Rob. I just wanted to add that, you know, this is a very difficult situation for everyone. We understand we had a pandemic, we're in a financial crisis now. So of course we are here for our students, and we are willing to have this conversation to do what's best for the district and for our students. But we want to make sure that we are prioritizing the backbone of our district, which is our educators and the education support professionals that are doing the hard work every day to support our students. So that's the message we hope that we're able to convey today, that we want to make sure we prioritize the parts of our district that are really, really crucial, especially now more than ever, to supporting our students. So thank you.
Awesome. Anything else anyone would like to share? Okay. Based on some of my preliminary conversations with the party's representatives, it's my understanding that there were some information requests that were provided from DCTA to the district, and that information has been provided back, but that there may be some questions, in fact, over the information, so that we make sure that we're all of the same understanding and of the same minds moving forward. Let me pause there and see, DCTA, are there some questions right now that you would like to ask before we move into proposals?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, by the way, Mark, with you and your team and everybody getting those answers back to us so quickly. That really helps to kind of expedite the process. There are a few things we wanted to kind of go over and just initial questions that we had. I'm sure we're going to have some other detailed questions later on, but we'll go through. So let me pull up that screen. This is bargaining in a virtual world is a whole new aspect here. But we'll just kind of, and I'm going to just kind of start off. There'll be different members of our team that have some more specifics, questions, Joe and Lawrence and Tiffany and everybody. Please chime in as we get down into those. So, and I think, Lawrence, we wanted to probably start with we wanted some more detail on those $16 million in cuts, correct? Do you want to kind of start us off with that one?
Sure. One of the data requests we made was the difference between the district recommendations and the BAC recommendations. And we received the PowerPoint. We wanted a little bit more detail. About a week and a half ago, the district announced that they were cutting, that they had found $16 million in efficiencies and cuts. And we would really like a breakdown of those and knowing, you know, what's the detail on that 16 million, so we can see what is in the budget advisory committee recommendations and what was not.
Sorry, just to get off mute. Thanks, Lawrence and Rob, for that question. And I'm just pulling up. I'm just going to look at the specific. There's a question you had, the question 3 of your questions. So let me just pull up real quick that information, and then I will. Okay, so I'm going to try and see how this works. As Rob, you said, you know, we're all learning in a virtual, how to do this virtually. So hopefully this will work, that I can share my screen with everyone. And it's the right screen that's being shared. Let's see. Oh, okay, hold on 1 sec. I need to make sure I see all of you on my screen, not the table. So let me just change that. This should now work. Are you seeing my screen? Are you seeing a table?
I'm seeing that. Yes, Mark.
Okay, let me put it into present mode so it's a little bigger for all of the people to see. Okay, so I'm going to move you out of the way so I can see this. So the 18, so we ended up with just about $18 million of reductions. Half of it, $10 million being from ongoing savings, and as you see here, 7.7 in terms of one time. I will say some of these numbers are fluctuating as we did this pretty quickly, and so there are some things that are fluctuating. So let me just walk through this with you, and Jim, please feel free to chime in as you feel. Sorry, I went wrong too fast. Chime in as you want and see if I say anything wrong. So actually, and I'm just going to go into the more detailed in the second two slides. So of the 17.7 million, what you're seeing is operational improvements. This is the $3.6 million in terms of efficiency around the bell times. So this is moving up to schools up to 15-minute difference in bell time so that we can run more efficiently with our buses. This will allow us to not use a third-party contractor, which is ALC, as much as we currently do, and that will allow us to insource and thus save money by using DPS staff to be able to provide transportation. Then we get into the departmental organizational structure. So what you'll see is $1 million reduction of the impact office. Then college and career department reductions. So there are, as we looked at last year with the reductions from a year ago, we merged a few teams last year, and we knew that we needed to get a leader in there and that there would be some savings we could probably identify, and they were able to do that and identify those savings in the college and career success department. These are different costs and other things. The Denver Kids contract is a one-time savings that we believe we can get under and fit under the CARES Act. Then you have the financial specialists. This is something that schools fund, and they purchase a service from central office. We have more people purchasing that, so we're able to reduce some of the general fund support for that. And then $1.8 million of elimination of vacant roles. So this was the big, from when I sent an email to the BAC about a week ago to where we ended up with the budget. This was one of the bigger changes. We went through and looked at all the vacant roles and did identify where we have savings with those roles. I don't have the details here. Jim does. We can send those to you in terms of which areas they're in. Then you have the curriculum purchase delay. This is the science curriculum. Some of this is we still need to purchase, but some of this is delaying certain things. As we talked in the BAC, there was a lot of conversations about kits and other things. Given the need for the component of the science that's online that we are moving forward with that can be purchased with CARES Act because it'll help with remote learning. But then there's also the kits and other things. And some of those we are purchasing because I think as we talked to the BAC, there was a lot of desire to have some of those to help with students and the need for those. The athletics, so this is just a small portion of the athletics budget dealing with transportation. This is one of those areas, as we talked in the Budget Advisory Committee, of there are likely, due to COVID, going to be limitations on our ability to do certain things within athletics. That is, and what we're showing here is basically the cost of transportation for games for athletics. What we have said to the BAC, what we've said to athletics too, is if COVID changes and we are in a place where we can do athletics, we will figure out a way to deal with this. We're not going to deny athletics. We're going to do athletics to the fullest extent as possible, but this is a likely savings. We could see more, but we wanted to be sure that we weren't putting athletics department in a tough position as the changes from CHASA and others continue to evolve, just like schooling as well.
Hey, Mark.
Real quick, hey Mark, before we go too far, can you just flip back to that page and just
of course.
want to ask just some specific questions around some of that piece. So, we noticed that piece about the athletics budget, the curriculum purchase delays. That was where the in the detail, I believe, it's primarily when we're adopting those new science kits, right? And the new science curriculum that we're doing, we're going to make sure and push out, make sure that schools have those curriculum kits available, but then we're going to delay some of that purchase into the following year just because we're not sure whether or not we're going to get to those. I mean, who knows what's going to happen next year so far, right?
Right, especially because a lot of those are manipulatives that we're not sure if we can use or not in a COVID environment.
And then there was, I know there's a little bit of like there's some schools and some different places that they may not do this district curriculum, but they can still supplant with their own curriculum. So there's some pieces, they'll still have some of that available. And I wasn't sure, is this where like the question we get from time to time is around from special needs teachers is whether or not, is this where like teachers of students with special needs, is this where their curriculum comes from, or is that a school-based decision still type of thing? Because when we looked at the line item detail, we didn't see anything in there. And I know that with the changes from, when we moved to remote learning this year, and who knows what's going on yet for the fall. I know our return to work committee hasn't yet completed their work, but the question is, will there still be curriculum available for those teachers of students with special needs? I know there are different types of components of that. Is that coming out of this budget, or is it coming from a different one?
Mark, can I take a stab at that?
Yeah.
So
thanks.
the funding that we're talking about delaying for purchase is the funding that would go into a district-wide purchase of new science materials. So the one-time savings we could use. Whenever we do a one-time purchase of core curriculum, it's for any teachers who teach that content, which should also include special educators, for example, either in center classrooms where they deliver science instruction, or special educators who are doing modifications to science curriculum if they need to. And frequently it's a smaller purchase for the special educators, given that they're, it might be the teacher's book or some of those things that they're doing it in support. It might be the actual materials themselves if they are the sole teacher of science for those students. The funds that go into purchasing curriculum specific to special education are not these funds. So those are allocated directly into school budgets in their textbook allocation.
Okay, that helps a lot, because I know there's we've gotten some questions from special education teachers around that item, talking about whether or not they will still, be able to support their students next year in that sense.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So
I'm
going to apologize. I have to step out for the convening that I'm doing, but I will come back when I'm finished.
Okay.
Hey, Rob, I have another question.
Yeah.
So on the recommendations from the district, the breakdown's pretty clear. I mean, that align with the BAC. So we have the athletics adjustment, the curriculum adjustment, those are all clear. The bail time one is clear. All the middle group there under department organizational structure, is that the 4.5 million in organizational change that's listed?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions here before Mark moves on? None? Okay.
Okay. So the next slide. So the big area here, or the big detail that I wanted to get through, is on independent contractors. So what you'll see is reductions on several contracts. So the elimination of the RevGen contract around the SPF, as you guys have been engaged in, and the board has been engaged in on moving away from the district SPF to the state SPF. Now the vote didn't happen, but I think that still is likely to happen. And even with that, we're likely not to be able to run the SPF at least next year anyway, given the data issues. So this would be the elimination of that contract with them to run the SPF, the elimination of the contract with Relay that does principal training, adjustment in the UVA. This is University of Virginia general fund portion. So what this is, there were some costs around UVA we were spending in general fund dollars. There are also, when we think of the state improvement plans around Manual and Lincoln, there are some dollars in those grants from the state that are paying for UVA. So UVA will continue in those capacities that are grant funded because of state approved grants that are around improvement plans, but would not have any general fund going towards that. Reduce the TFA, Teach for America contract, and then also reduce RICO is our, those in the district know, our printer vendor. We would eliminate color printing within the district, which would save us $500,000. We're hopeful that we actually, given the move to remote learning and the changes in behavior, that we actually could see some significant savings on top of that in terms of just changes in how much we are printing in general as a district. So we are also looking at that as we move forward. Software savings, this is the conversion we had started last year to move from from Microsoft to Google. The goal is to do it by by December of 2020, so the end of this calendar year. This is district-wide, that all employees and central office, school-based staff would move off of Microsoft into Google. There will be a few exceptions here and there just because of certain things that you might need to report to the state or others that we need Microsoft, but for the most part, the district will be moving off and there'll be a savings. This is not just for anyone listening, because I know there's a lot of concerns around this. This isn't moving off of Microsoft Exchange or the email platform, Outlook, but Docs, Word, Excel, those type of things. So there's that saving. And I will say, this is the one place that while remote learning and other things have had huge impacts and struggles, this has helped us move to probably Google faster than we otherwise had thought of, as everyone is doing much more remotely. Then supplies and extra pay. This is some of the training and other work that we will be doing over the summer with our teachers and other staff that we believe is going to be refocused on COVID related, getting prepped for school next year. And so we can use that within the CARES funding. Then you have the travel. So two things on travel. One is we're likely not to be able to travel anyway, but also even if we would eliminate ability for staff to be able to travel. This isn't all travel, just to be clear. This is travel related to central office. There are travel, conferences, and others, whether it's required for licensing issues or for teacher staff, like school-based. Some of the travel expenses is still in there. We might see some savings from that as well, but this is the central portion of travel that is eliminated. And then elimination of cell phones for central office. This is not all. Some people will need, whether you're a facilities manager or others, cell phone is really essential in their work, but for others who it's not, we would eliminate the purchase of cell phones and the bill of that, the monthly fee for that. And then all recognition events, because we're not going to be able to do group events next year. Those are suspended for next year, and you have the savings from that as well. And that's just a one-time saving. So that is all of the detail of the 18 roughly million of ongoing and one time.
Are there questions here?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Mark, I guess our first question is, when you on this slide, you've got eliminate RevGen SPF, you've got eliminate relay, and it's in the usage of the word eliminate that I'm not understanding, because I think, and maybe it's a piece about what is budgeted future versus what has been budgeted in the past. I know, our current, I believe for RevGen alone, what we've been in FY19 was 996,000. And so does that mean that this would have been the RevGen contract for next year, or why is there a discrepancy between 900,000 versus 0.6 on that? I mean, that's the same thing with relay and some of these other things. So that's why we weren't quite sure on how that worked.
Definitely a very good question. I wanted to look at.
Mark, can I talk about the RevGen piece of that for just a minute? Rob, I think there's basically two pieces there. One of them is exactly what you said. One of them is kind of the year-to-year change in the RevGen contract. So you're exactly right, looking at next year's amount. The other piece is that there's other work that RevGen does throughout the district other than the SPF. And so this is the RevGen SPF contract. So it's taking that scope and eliminating that. And that's why we highlighted the SPF piece there. Because other departments have, we'll hire them to do other work. And as you know, we have ongoing scrutiny of third-party contracts. We want to drive this $1.9 million number higher in terms of savings. So we're scrutinizing all of that. But this is the SPF piece there that we're pulling out. So it's really those two things.
And it was, Rob, as you said, a couple of years ago, it was a higher amount just for the SPF. Over the last couple of years, we have been, the amount of, like, for example, I think it was 2 years ago, we had pulled back on some of the customized reports that we were having RevGen run for schools. And that saved us money. And so over the last couple of years, we've been slowly pulling back and reducing the cost with RevGen. And so this is what is budgeted for the SPF for next year. The other, as Jim said, the other expenses, and those are as like on a project basis, they go up and down. I think a lot of it will be reduced next year, but from individual budgets. But it's usually about $100,000 to $200,000 on top of this. It's not, this is the big piece of that. Relay.
396,000.
What?
396,000 according to the contract that was provided to us.
For the other services?
Yes.
Okay, I have to look at that.
RevGen contract was for 996,000.
Yeah, but I think some of that 900. Sorry, I'm trying to look at both and see your face and talk. It's always strange online. Some of those contracts that has been reduced over time. So I'd have to look and see what was in the SPF versus not in the SPF. And so we have the details, and we can definitely, I think we've sent that before, but we can pull that up and get that to you on the RevGen. But this is what we think the savings is from elimination, and then what is we would budgeting for next year for the SPF. And I don't know, Jim, do you have the detail on the relay?
I mean, I'm sorry, Rob, is the question on the relay essentially the same? The question about this amount versus?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, like, number one, when we looked at that number with the relay, we were kind of curious as to what exactly that entailed. Is it, is that FTE that we're doing? Because I know that we have people that actually work for relay that come and coach our principals and other people. Or is that like a agency fee that we pay to relay for the work that they do? And or I know we send principals in years past, we've sent them to New York for like at least a week to 2 weeks, depending throughout the year. And I know, hotel rooms in New York aren't cheap. But then I didn't know, like, there's been times we've heard, that relay budget has actually been bigger. And we're wondering is like, okay, what is that specific amount for relay? Is that solely for services? Is that FTE? Is that, do we have the travel expenses and things that we do when we send people to New York? Is that go into a different pot? Is that reflected differently in the budget? We're just kind of curious as to how that number breaks down, and there's a $400,000 savings there, but then is there more room for savings, considering that we do have a lot of people that are actually supporting our principals in other ways?
Rob, I think I'm going to need to circle back with you on the specific details there. I know we're trying to, what we have there is eliminating the general fund portion that is kind of direct spend on relay. But then I think there's another level of granularity that you're asking for that is we can get you, but I don't have it at my fingertips. So if you just give us a little bit of time, I'll come back to you with that.
And I do believe, Rob, before the similar type of thing with RevGen over the last couple of years, I think as we used to use Relay at a higher level in terms of how many people went to Relay, got trained through Relay. I think most of this expense is that expense of what are we paying for those cohorts who are going to get trained, and then the supports. So both the training and the supports ongoing through the year. As we have had less people going through, partly because we've also had, less turnover of principals and others, that has lowered that amount. But we can get you the specific details over the last couple of years of what we spent and what we expected to spend next year.
Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting to just find out, like within those contracts, if there's a specific contract or something that we have, what is that? Is it FTE, like I said, or is that an agency fee that we pay them? Just curious.
I think it's like a class, but we'll get that. I think it's like a course that we're paying for each individual, but we'll get you that information.
Okay. And we're not paying for those principals to get their licenses, are we? Like their principals' licenses? I know that there's a different program we utilize that does that, correct?
I believe so, but maybe actually Antonio might actually know the answer to that. If you don't worry about it, but I'm not sure if you know Antonio or Cesar.
No, I don't. I really don't. I think most principals or most candidates that are principals going for administrator license tend to go through their own way of doing that. But I'm not sure if there's a program set up at the district. I'm just unaware.
We'll double check on that, Rob.
We've heard some different reports of that, and that we've actually heard that we're paying for a lot of those things with our principal programs. Just curious as to if those programs are continuing forward or what's happening with it. I mean, we do recognize that, like, we want to have great principals in all of our schools. There's questions we always have about the number of administration, personnel versus the number of teachers and things like that. But we wonder, how many of those programs do we have? What's going on? Because you got Relay, you got other ones.
Yeah.
It's just, and
Learn to Lead, there's the principal in residence and some of those other things. I will say we have been talking about like Learn to Lead and others of what does it look like moving forward. However, like especially with Learn to Lead, we've already offered those positions to people prior to the start of COVID. And so we felt we needed to live up to that, as where we were moving through with those individuals and move them into that. But looking at like, do we need less of a cohort in the future years, and can see potential savings as well as we look at those. So those are definitely under review as well.
Okay. Well, we look forward to some more detail on that for sure. Yeah. Lawrence or team, is there something else on here that we had questions about? I
had a quick follow-up. Why do we need to use RevGen to do other work other than the SPF? We already have a Department of Assessment, Research, and Evaluation, and a Department of Finance. We have departments in DPS that do this kind of number crunching and stuff. So why do we need to outsource work to RevGen? What kind of work they are doing for us beyond the SPF work?
It's a good question, Henry. I do not know off the top of my head what those individual projects are, but we can get you the details on that as well. And I think it's, as teams always try and balance what is there, and I think we always try and figure out what makes sense to hire and have capacity versus what's a one-time project that you would want to hire a contractor so that you're not doing ongoing costs. And so there's a balance there, but I don't know the specifics of the projects, but we can get that for you.
We also had, Lynn, you had a question, I believe.
Yes, I was the DCTA representative on the Budget Advisory Committee, and my concern here is that these figures are different from what was presented to the BAC. When we spoke about reducing or eliminating RevGen and Relay, the figure that the BAC was given was $1 million each, and now these figures have dropped significantly. Can you explain that to me, Mark?
I'll defer to Jim, but I don't remember I think there were a table I saw that that you guys put together that had $1 million. I don't remember ever putting out something that said $1 million, but I defer to Jim.
Oh, I'm sure I can find it for you in the
That'd be
many PowerPoints that you produced.
I think I think that there's a couple of things going on here, Lynn. And I think, one of them is, as everybody knows, this budget is being developed on a very fast timeline in terms of responding to the level of reduction that we're seeing. And so in doing that, there certainly is no question that our analysis is becoming more refined as we go through this process. And so I think that is one possibility with some of that as you look at some of these numbers, and we continue to try to drill down and to work to get more and more precision in terms of the amounts that can actually that are in each of those. And so, for example, that $1 million on RevGen, I think, Lawrence, to your point, in a previous year we had $1 million in the total contract. My guess is that's the number that we started with as we were gathering information as quickly as possible to try to give the BAC as much information as they could have to make some of these decisions. And then as we continued to refine our work over the course of the last couple months, 6 weeks, couple months, we've gotten more precise with that. And so I think that is a piece of it. I also think we all, as you know, Len, there was a benchmark of about $1 million in savings that was set, and we were presenting things at a pretty high level in terms of the level of savings. Just simply, trying to give the Budget Advisory Committee a sense of the order of magnitude of each of these. So, I think those are we continue to try to get more precise here. We, in terms of the RevGen, as we focus in on the SPF number, that's the number that we have found for next year. And so, we continue to work at that.
And what I heard was that we just weren't sure of the answer, so that's something we're going to follow up on. Is that correct?
Jane, I think that's the answer on the relay piece. In terms of the specific details on what's included in that 400,000, we're going to circle back with you with more detail on that. On the RevGen piece, we're comfortable with that. That number is the SPF portion of the RevGen contract for next year. And so, and again, that's some of the refinement that we have seen over the last couple of months, is the focus on next year and the focus on the SPF portion of that contract.
And we'll work on getting the other spends of RevGen. We'll get you the details on what those have been for. That will take a little more time, but we will get that.
Thank you, Mark. I had noted that per Henry's question, more details on some of those projects and expenditures outside of the SPF. So in addition to the information that the district is going to provide on RevGen or Relay, are there any additional questions here?
Yeah, I have one, and that is in the third-party contracts, we spend $533,000 with Verizon. Is that for cell phones? And who all is getting a cell phone if we're only cutting 0.1 of that?
Lawrence, I can respond to some of that. I don't know that I can if I can tell you the precise numbers off the top of my head to tie to that specific number, but I can tell you that the people that are getting cell phones, by the largest number are those, like, as Mark talked about, those are people like facility managers and people who have they have a responsibility within the school, they're mobile, and they need to have the cell phone for their job. And so the vast majority of those are people kind of in that type of role. I can pull up the specific detail. We can get that to you. But the 100,000 that we've identified here really is looking at anybody who's not in a direct, school support role like that wouldn't trying to identify those as candidates for eliminating those cell phones. So it really is. I think the facility managers is probably the best example of those. But there's a couple others that we could pull up and provide to you as well.
So there's only approximately 100 facility managers or less. So assuming those 100 facility managers, their cell phone bill is $50 a month for the district, I mean, that's not a ton of money there. There's other people downtown with cell phones is the point.
Yeah, so I know like we had a long conversation because we were looking at some point up to about $200,000 instead of it's about 140 or 130, I believe, as we look at it. Some of those were the related to special education and some of the itinerant staff who is traveling around supporting with special education. And I think as we talked about, we felt that they needed that given that they are mobile around the city as they're providing that. I also wonder as you look at, because it's a roll up on Verizon, we probably have more detail, because I also wonder, we do use, for example, Verizon with the MyTech program for some of the hotspots we do for students. We also have, there could be other things within that Verizon thing, not just cell phones. So let us get you the detail of that, because I do think we can tell you how many cell phones and what department those cell phones are in, so you can understand that. And then I think we can. And then what is not cell phones, so you have that detail.
Does senior leadership have cell phones?
I don't. Some of the senior leadership, what?
Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Some of them do, but this would eliminate that. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that I know a lot of our teachers moved to the Google platform where they have their own cell phone number, and it actually comes through, on their email and everything. It's been quite useful for talking to students and parents and things, and maybe that's something that we could save some additional money and for the district in that sense by continuing to move to that platform for many of those for some of those issues.
Happy to explore it. I think I think it definitely, as technology keeps getting better, I think how do we reduce costs in ways that allow people to do their jobs while not with decreasing costs for the district. So we're completely open to those type of conversations.
Lynn, did you have any others, or are we good?
I'm only hearing from members and folks in our buildings that most of our facilities managers have walkie-talkies. They have cell phones and walkie-talkies.
Yeah, some do. I mean, it depends on the site. The others, there's differences on what they have, but let us get you the details, Lynn.
Mark, to your point about the Verizon, the other piece that's in there are the hotspots, and that's another part of that. So that is as you sum up to that number, that's an important piece that's included there as well.
All right. Any other questions? If not on this slide, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Real quick, Jim. You said some of that was the Verizon hotspots, but those aren't the hotspots that we provided for students and families, or is that?
Yes.
I believe so. I believe they're all in one contract. Mark.
Okay, because my question on that would be just whether or not, I know some of that was probably COVID related, and my guess would be that would be covered by COVID money that's coming in versus ongoing costs and things like that. So just curious about that breakdown.
Yeah, that would be different. What the hotspots would be are for the MyTech schools, the one-to-one devices. We also provided hotspots for students at that time as well. And I don't know for sure, so we'll get the information. It could be in that line, because it might not be Verizon, it might be Sprint, it might be T-Mobile. So I don't know exactly, but it could be. So I just want to get the detail and make sure that we're giving you the accurate information on that.
There's also $366,000 spent on CenturyLink, which would probably be the internet stuff that is being described.
So CenturyLink is probably our phone systems. So the actual hardline phone calls that we have.
Okay.
Mark, out of curiosity, do we spend more on the hard lines versus cell phones or cell phones versus hard lines?
What I would say is we spend less per device by significant on the hard lines than the cell phones. Cell phones are more costly on a individual device, but we spend more on the hard lines than the cell phones, partly because we just have more of them. We also can't get, this is one of the questions I had a while ago, was like, why don't we just move to like being all not having hard lines? And the problem with that is some of the 911 safety issues, you need those hard lines within buildings to be able to do things. And I was like, we can get rid of all of this. And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, fine.
Okay, DCTA, any additional questions about the information that you've received, even not on this slide here, just in general, any additional questions?
I think the next one we've got 2 or 3 more just opener, kind of like trying to understand the data that was given to us yesterday. And one is around the travel. So I don't know, Mark, is it possible you could pull up that travel piece and maybe you can walk us through it, because we weren't really clear on, like, there was some different colored stuff on there, and
Yeah, happy to do that. I'm not shocked you're asking questions on that, because
good teachers ask good questions, right?
You do. It was when I went through it, I had questions myself. So let me just. Do you remember what question number that was? We just have more than question number, so it's just.
That was question 13.
Yep, there it is. Thank you. Okay. This is the sheet you were talking about, right, Rob?
Yes.
Okay. And Jim, I don't know. So let me just, the high level here on if you see the 629, 530, 522 is what we're saying would be in savings. The total travel budget lined in those code numbers, so from our data set, is about just under 1.5 million. So there's a difference of that 835. And so what it's trying to do is say, here's where here's the total budget on column D in these areas. Here's what we're saying is going to be reduced, and here's what's not going to be reduced. And then there's more detail at the bottom of what they are. What?
She's not a numbers person.
Okay.
Her and I are pretty much like, what?
Tiffany, you're not muted. Sorry. So you'll see I went to the bottom because this is the biggest one, is being that 286,000, which is the biggest difference, is PD for schools, for AP, IB, some of the professional development around IB and other things, CTE conferences that are required for staff. So what we were looking at, and then you'll see again, some of it is also, as we talked about, Learn to Lead, AP principles, and other work there on the 200,000. And then the last big one, I would say there's two more big ones. This is Relay is taken out of this line, but then the College Board contract. And then there is money within, and this is not, it's coded as travel, but it's not all travel, some of the supplies and costs around the regional structures and the regional supports for them. And the last one, TS Gold training that is needed for the ECE and Kinder programs. So that's what it's trying to say is, this is the much we're saving. This is the total budget. This is the difference. And then on the bottom explains what those differences are. And as you can see from the difference, it's really school-based staff that was pulled out of it to try and make sure that those travels that are needed, whether it's for professional development or training that is needed, those would continue to move forward. We might not see, I will say, we might not, some of those might not happen, but that is the thought process of where we came up with the numbers. Jim, anything that I missed?
What's the process that you're using to make that determination, like whether or not, am I still on?
You are.
Yep.
Rob, we can't hear you right now if you're speaking. It appears that he's frozen. While he's working that out, did anyone else have any questions at this time?
Jim, did you want to add anything that I might have missed?
No, I mean, I think that's the key. I mean, I think that's the detail there. And I think the overarching theme is trying to ensure that the travel savings are focused on the central office travel, and in areas that are impacting schools like the AP and IB were carved out of that.
Thanks, Jim. Lynn, I see you have a question.
Yes, Mark, could you display line 45 for our viewers?
Sure.
My question here is, what are we paying for $25,890 for the chief impact officer? And then I can see how it's detailed below, but who is the chief impact officer and what does the impact office do?
Yeah, so as you'll see, there is, and this is not just in this line item, you'll see there's as we went and do budgets for central office for conferences or other professional development, we allocate a certain amount per individual to be able to allow for staff to be able to do professional development. So that is what the 10,000, almost 11,000 is in this line item on 46. On 47, it is a specific conference that the staff does go to that we are not going to next year. The Chief Impact Officer is Amy Keltner as an individual. The role is, as we reorged, we consolidated several teams and changed a few things. Two main roles. One is what used to be the project management office, which was under our Department of Technology Services, was moved into this office. That is the biggest portion of the staffing of that, which does a lot of the project management on specific big projects that are happening. For example, the reopening for next year, they're helping with teams to project manage that work. And then they do a lot of the research, some of the functions that used to be in AR&E, some of the bigger research projects, the data analysis on system-wide things like the data that we were doing around performance management, that the board, in terms of priorities, reporting out to the board on specific metrics of our strategic plan. That is some of the work that they do as well.
So Mark, just to be clear, we have the columns in the line items that have a 0 in column E. Those have been reduced, that they're not being spent. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then are these considered one-time savings or ongoing?
So for right now, they're one-time savings, but I think it's going to be one of those things that we will, as we see what happens with the economy, this is one that will not get restored until we're in a place that we're in a much stronger position. But there's definitely savings because we're not going to travel to conferences, but I do think we'll limit a significant portion of this until we are in a much stronger position.
Okay, I do hope that these become ongoing, because teachers that travel to conferences or do their own PD for their own licensing or for salary advancement, they have to pay that out of their own pocket. So quite frankly, the team's pretty shocked that we pay this for the upper echelons in the district, but not for our teachers and SSPs.
Okay, Rob, I see that you're back. I know you got cut off mid-question. Did you have a question that you wanted to ask about this?
Yeah, so I think the team got to it there. Sorry about that. Yeah,
No worries.
having some internet issues today. Not really sure what's going on, but yeah. So, team, we got all of our questions. I know there were some questions around the. It looks like I know we're in years past we've been paying for general counsel to go get their license renewals. With continuing education on that, I'm glad to see we won't be doing that this coming year. But I think the ongoing concern is, as Lawrence pointed out, is how much of this are we really, we don't do these things for teachers. And so is there things that we need to rethink in our budget and our priorities moving forward that would actually, save money in the long run and make it so that we wouldn't have to do any other cuts in future years and or this year. Team, let's, I think, sorry, I'm just catching up on the notes, where we're at. We got the travel piece, and I know we were going to talk about, where is it? Oh, the third-party contracts. You want to talk about that a little bit? Lawrence, we had some questions on those. I think a lot of our questions on third-party contracts were just, we just didn't really seem to understand why we pay some of these things when we do, or how it went. So let's jump in there for a minute.
Mark, can you display that spreadsheet for our viewers, please?
Yeah, Lynn, I'm just looking for it right now. Second, I'm sorry. Let me actually open up a different one. And make sure I get the right one. I'm sorry. Having a little computer difficulties. Give me a second. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. And then I will. Okay. So, and I'm gonna, I went too far. Let me get to the more summarized one, so it's just easier than all the detail, but I just need to resize my screen so I can do that. Okay. So here's the high level data, and goes down all the way for everything, so we can talk through that.
So just kind of starting at the top of the Sunbelt staffing, that's when we outsource to find nurses and also SSPs. Is it other SSPs like our speech language? Is that what we're understanding? I think there's the Sunbelt and there's a few others that we utilize as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Sunbelt is one of them. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
Go on, Amanda. You know better than I do.
No, I was just saying I know that Sunbelt staffing does OTPT, SLP. I'm not too familiar with the extent of what services they offer as contract. But I know those two for sure.
I guess the question I would have, Mark, is based on the staffing agencies and based on where our current estimates are for hiring now, have those numbers been adjusted based on where we ended being fully staffed at the end of the year, or who we've been able to onboard since then versus who we're contracting out based on vacancies?
So these are the actual expenditures for FY19. So this is 18-19 school year. So that we had, because we couldn't show this year because we don't even have the full fiscal year finished. So this was just what it was a year ago. As people develop their budgets, if we feel like this is mostly in the SEO budget, as they look at staffing, they will adjust this budget up or down or this amount so that if they have personnel and they don't need to use this as much, this will go down as they budget. So they do that on an annual basis.
What other specific questions are there that we can ask here?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull down and find some of the detail. I'm trying to find specific line items because we noticed they're like certain, there's individuals that we contract with.
Yeah.
We noticed, so we weren't sure what some of those contracted services were for. There's the, there was also, we were kind of curious about the, let me just find the correct line item. And Lawrence, or if anybody has that line item, I'm thinking about the, there was some innovation schools.
Yeah, the Beacon Network Schools Innovation line item, I don't know the number, but we spend $100,000 with a contract. Wondering why that is in Beacon Communications.
Line 95.
Mark, could you show us line 95?
Let's get in there.
Yeah, and I guess the question there was like, why wouldn't that be within a school budget type of thing? Why would it be in this format versus a school budget format?
Sorry, it somehow changed on me. So let me get back there for a second, just so. Okay, I don't know what's happening. I'm sorry. It's having some problems. This is all, so like even actually what you're seeing now, this is all contracts regardless of where they are. So you are seeing school-based contracts. This is not just central contracts. So for example, like what's billing in here, like you have Oakland, like you're seeing Oakland, you're seeing Pasquale Ladue, you're seeing some of these individual contracts. My daughter's school at Fairmont. So some of this is not just what central office is. This is the entire district, including schools. So I think we'd have to look, because I assume that is at the Beacon network and not at our, and not at central, but we'd have to look and see the detail on that.
So the tab says total values by vendor. So like, for instance, New Legacy Charter High School, are they a vendor that we're paying $115,000 to? Because that's where Verizon's listed and all the other contracts that we have.
Mark, if I could circle back on the Beacon one quickly, and then Lawrence come back to your question just for a minute. So on the Beacon, those are both from the Kepner Beacon and from Grant Beacon. Those are contracts with the Innovation Network. So my guess, and that we would need to drill into this, is that those are essentially the contract that they're paying, the management contract that kind of they're paying to the network itself for the services they're providing as part of the Innovation Network. Lawrence, I'm sorry, you had a question about one of the schools in particular.
Line item 81 says
Yes,
New
sir.
Legacy Charter High School, $114,528. But this is listing by vendor. So what service are they providing?
So that is an early ed contract. So that is that's services that are we're paying for. My presumption, again, to confirm, is that's similar to that's one of our community sites, and so it's which is what a significant amount of our contracting is. So that contract is through early ed.
You said it's Jim. You said early ed, the New Legacy Charter High School. That's early ed.
Yes, sir. That's from it's from the early. That's from the through the early ed department, and that's where who holds the contract. So those tend to be through Forks community sites. Again, we can drill in and get the specifics on that particular contract.
Yeah, I just wasn't when you said that, it didn't make sense because you were saying early childhood, but then it says high school on it, so I wasn't quite clear on how that went, why that would go through the early ed department.
But it's likely, I think we can double check, but it could be that they are running an early childhood center as well, and so it's a different building or other things, and so we'll get the details on that. But
yeah, is there a way we could differentiate these two of whether it's a school paying for it or versus a central like?
So if you look at the tab, in the first tab in the document, as you go down, you'll see schools and like who's paying for it. So you'll see all the list of schools that they're paying for, and then as you go, like it starts with schools, and then it goes into other groups underneath that. Now, this is not what you're getting here as individuals, like individual contracts, and then as you go to here, it rolls it up regardless of which is paying. So you might have multiple contracts or multiple things underneath this. Like it's like 3 schools are hiring Boys and Girls Club to do something. And you'll see that as what a total of Boys and Girls Club would be in here, but the more detailed version is down here. And then there's more years of data later on 18, 19, and 20 in the 4th tab.
Okay. That helps us to understand how the spreadsheet works and how that goes through, because we weren't quite clear on that. I guess then we'll get into some specific questions probably later about what it is that these things do for the district and how they support students and their needs. We did notice, we know that for a long time, like there's been the Martin Simple law firm that we have had a long-term relationship with, but then we noticed there's some other law firms in there that are popping up, like there was one we saw earlier. We weren't quite sure, like how many, are we paying multiple law firms then, or does it depend on what, like do we do different services with those law firms for different things, or?
Yeah. So for example, like Butler Snow is our bond counsel, who, if we're going for bond or when we're doing any issuances, we use them. There are others, and like Butler Snow is the one I know the best, just because we, as former CFO, we dealt with them the most. There are others, whether it's different lawsuits or others that we, will hire because we don't have the expertise within in-house to be able to do some of those issues. So,
like the I-9 guidance. Sorry, Mark, it's June. Guidance around visas and I-9s that we provide to employees. We contract with a certain firm as well.
There's usually specific type of service.
I understand there are certain legal instances where you don't necessarily have that type of expertise in the current legal staff of the district. However, I've also seen different lawyers used in arbitrations or bargaining when those are actually things that you do have the legal expertise for.
Yeah, I mean, I think we haven't used that anytime recently, at least to so I'm not sure. Like I get that. I think we're looking at all budgets and how we're dealing with those, but I think a lot of these legal ones are these one-offs where there's expertise that we need for a certain issue that doesn't make sense to have in-house because we don't have a consistent use of it, like bond counsel, like I-9 issues and things like that.
Okay. DCTA, any other questions around third-party contracts before we move on to your next item for questioning? I think you said there were at least one more, Rob. Am I right?
Well, I think we're going to probably have some more specific. It helped us to understand how the table works and what those went through, and I think we'll probably have some more specifics later on as we dig down deeper into those different avenues. So I think, like, as I'm looking at our list of questions that we wanted to make sure and cover this morning, we wanted to just kind of jump in. There was a question about with number 8 with the detail on the district recommendation for the bell change, providing a savings of 3.6 versus 3.7. I did, Lawrence, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we got our question on that one, did we?
No, the Budget Advisory Committee, they recommended, they said it would be a $3.7 million savings, and in the district presentation it said 3.6. So curious as to what that $100,000 difference is.
Fat finger, basically. So if you look at the original deck that we presented, which is what shared with you with the Board of Education on the bell time adjustment, it was 3.6. It was mistyped within the document. So the right number from what we started with was 3.6. So
nobody caught that, even though y'all are serving on the BAC?
Things are moving quickly. We're not, yes.
And I guess a concern there would just be there's a few instances of fat fingers throughout where, you know, when you add up that money, it actually gets into some significant savings. And so, yeah, I guess we might want to work on our typing skills.
Yeah, and Rob, I mean, I think part of it is that some of the numbers before, like, we're getting more refined as we do them. So there's a difference between a fat finger and the more refined, but so some of the numbers are changing because we're looking and getting deeper, and we're trying to get quick estimates of proposals that came in and then move through them. Some of them is just an error, and that one was just an error.
Okay, gotcha.
Just to clarify, it should be 3.7. Am I correct in that?
3.6.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We'll move on. Move on, Kayla.
Yep. Other questions? Where do we look next?
I know we had a question around the when we took a look at the savings that we would get from it's a salary lag turnover savings, but it's also the health benefit related. Because what we were curious about was, and you know, we met yesterday just to kind of clarify those numbers as you handed those off to us, but you had originally budgeted for, and let's go ahead and pull up the. Which one is it here? I guess it'd be the average salary. Is that the one we want, Lawrence, or is it the detail on the? It's kind of, it's question 6 and question 15. They're kind of related. The main question here was, you've got us. So you were originally, projecting for about 700. Teachers and SSPs that would be moving on next year, but then you refined your numbers to be about, I believe it's 353. I'm trying to pull up the right